As you know, all of our schools are involved in testing over the next several weeks. But we submit to you that those tests will not measure what you have witnessed here tonight. And we want you to know that this is learning at the highest level. It is also my job to be an advocate for all of the arts. I would mention that the Pensacola Symphony, who let us use their baffles tonight, are giving a concert in this hall on Saturday night. They need your attendance here. It's a wonderful pops concert about Valentine's. But all of our arts agencies have those kinds of programs, and we hope that you take advantage of the depth and breadth of the arts experiences in our community, and that you assure that the arts are still an important part, an equal partner in our curriculum in our schools. Would you please welcome our high school team leader, Mr. Joe Hu.
Thank you. At this time, I'll introduce our senior high band directors. From Escambia High School, Mr. Doug Holsworth. Also from Escambia High School, Randy Joe Penton. From Northview High School, Mr. Tom Buck. Pensacola High School, Mr. Pete Crosstown. Washington High School, Mr. Don Tipton. From Northwest Florida Home School, Ms. Glenda Jones. From Pine Forest High School, Mr. Dennis Diffie. Tate High School, Mr. Kevin Cannell. And from Woodland High School, Mr. Daniel Wooten. I'd like to thank all these directors for their hard work in coordinating this event tonight. Thank you. This time, it really is my pleasure to introduce the senior high clinician to you. You've already seen two fine conductors on the stage, and you've heard the music of many fine composers, and now you're about to meet one of those fine composers. Mr. Robert W. Smith is Director of Bands at Troy State University. In addition to his administrative duties, he is also conductor of the TSU Symphony Band and director of the renowned show band, not the show band, the Sound of the South marching band. It's an easy mistake for me to make. His bio says he is one of the most popular and prolific composers, but I would change that. He's a little modest. I believe he is, at this point, the most popular and prolific composer of concert band literature in the world today. His music is played all over the world by bands of all levels. You've already heard one of his middle school pieces performed. His music is performed by the service bands all over the world. You're going to have a treat tonight because you're going to be able to hear and see this man at work with some of his own music. He is a graduate of Troy State University and also holds a degree from the University of Miami. This time, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium the Senior High All-County Band and their conductor, Mr. Robert W. Smith.
Thank you very much. It is a real pleasure to be in Pensacola this evening and working with these very talented musicians. I hesitate to call them students because they don't play like students. They play like musicians. And what a great couple of days we've had. The opening selection is a fanfare by Jan van der Roost, a Danish composer, and it's entitled Firework. Next piece we'd like to do for you would be a band concert without a traditional Sousa march. We're going to play a march entitled The Black Horse Troop. Sousa wrote this in 1924, premiered shortly thereafter in 25. It was written for a National Guard troop in Ohio, a mounted troop, of which many people don't realize that Sousa was a devoted horseman himself. One of those interesting things, as I was explaining to the students about the premiere of this particular piece, imagine the auditorium much like we're sitting in right now. And as we got down to the Grandioso, the entire troop rode into the auditorium. Horses on stage and finished behind the band. So if you start hearing some strange things and the air starts to smell a little different, it's in the spirit of John Philip Sousa. We'd like to please present the Black Horse Troop. saw the students for the very first time last night, I threw them a bit of a curve. Mr. Hooten had asked me, oh gosh, it seems like it was maybe 6, 8 weeks ago, what do you want to play with the honor band? So I gave him a list of titles. And the directors had an opportunity to have a few rehearsals before I arrived, just to take care of any basic issues with the music. However, I brought a brand new piece, and they sight read it last night for the very first time. Really didn't know it was coming. This is going to be only the second performance of this particular work. It's brand new. It just rolled out of, used to say, a composer would say it rolls off your pen. Now it came out of my computer printer about 8 weeks ago. I premiered it over in Georgia about 3 weeks ago, so this is only the second performance. The title is In a Gentle Rain. Now this is a very soft, very reflective type of work. The original melody, I was very fortunate to be commissioned by Mr. Roger Barron and the United States Navy Band in Washington to write a suite for euphonium. And this was part of that suite. And the second movement, it's a second movement, the second movement became very, very popular. We had so many requests. Would you please take that solo and set it for any of the instruments in the band? So we sight read this last night, and then we passed out solos. It was open to any wind instrument in the band. There were approximately 20 students that this morning, about an hour into our rehearsal, had a preliminary audition with the directors that are on the high school team. And they narrowed it down to, I believe it was 7 or 8 or so. And then we did an audition with those people in front of the band. And then we are going to break the solo up into 4 parts and feature 4 students. I'd like to ask them to come forward at this time to get set. From Escambia, Rachel Newland. From Bassoon, Homeschool, Abigail Jones. From Washington, Greg Stewart. And trombone from Tate High School, and also incredibly impressive, I just found out just before the concert, he's only a sophomore, Mr. James Hubbard. Now, this piece is a little different than what you're used to hearing at a band concert. I would invite you maybe to just shut your eyes and see if maybe we take you to a slightly different place. In a Gentle Rain. selections are actually two movements of a symphony. So I'm going to take this opportunity to thank some very special people involved in putting this together. As you could tell from the students on the stage, it's been a really wonderful couple of days. And as I told them several times, you know, we're not going to play a technically perfect concert tonight, but boy, we can sure play with heart and passion, as they just did so well. And all of this, as you've heard before tonight, but I want to reiterate one more time, all of this is not possible without incredibly gifted teachers and without support from administration at all levels. Mr. Jim May, superintendent, I had lunch with him yesterday, as did all of our conductors. What a wonderful, wonderful man. I would like to work for him. He did it. He's just we carried on a wonderful conversation and talk about support of the arts. Our superintendent, Dr. Larry Reed, again, wonderful man. His hospitality has been above and beyond. I also want to thank Mr. Joe Hooten and the entire staff, high school team that put all this together. Ours was a little more involved, particularly when it came down to all the special effects and things like that we did. And you will really truly understand when we play these last couple of numbers. But thank you so much to Joe. I'm really enjoying our renewed friendship. Joe and I actually went to the same university many, many years ago. I think Moses was in the band at that time. And I was born and raised in Alabama. And I don't sound like it, I know that. So that's the first thing that comes to most people's minds. My father was military and was stationed at Fort Rucker. And I met my mother there, who was a local girl. I was born in a military hospital. And literally got my undergrad at Troy State University, but during my high school days, actually, this very same honor bands that you see on the stage, I was the 8th and 9th grader who was aspiring to play like Joe Hooten was when he was a 11th and 12th grader. And we shared the same university, so it's really wonderful after all these years, after leaving the state. I left the state upon my graduation, left for 18 years, and just returned to this area with my family to raise my children in the South Alabama, Panhandle, Florida area, which I hold so very dear. So it's good. Thank you again, Joe, for all your very, very hard work. We appreciate it very much. We thought that we would take you on yet another journey, and believe me, after you hear this, you're going to know that you needed the gentle shower a while ago. I was so fortunate to be commissioned to write a symphony during the decade of the 90s, and it was actually 4 years in the making. Instead of trying to write it all in one sitting, I did a movement a year. It was based upon the work of Dante, the 13th century Italian poet. Dante wrote a trilogy entitled The Divine Comedy. It consisted of 3 books, the Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. I was first introduced to this literary masterpiece when I was an undergraduate student at Troy State back in the 70s. Luckily, at that time, I had 2 very wonderful conscious thoughts. I was so moved by this piece of literature that I instantly knew there was an incredible piece of music in here somewhere. But maybe the smartest thing I've ever done in my life was to say, you know, you better wait about 15 years till you get some age and maturity before you waste a really good idea on exuberant youth. And I did that. This piece was a commission between 2 universities, George Mason University, which is in Fairfax, Virginia, and James Madison University, which is also in Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley, in a town called Harrisonburg. We're going to play the first and the third movements for you this evening. And if you will indulge me, I'm going to give you a rather brief Cliff's Notes version of the program so that you will understand maybe some of the things that you are hearing on the stage. The story begins with Dante. He made himself the main character. Dante is lost in a very dark wood. He falls asleep. He wakes up. He's lost. He can't get home, much like a Rip Van Winkle type character. All of a sudden, he realizes that in order for him to get home, he has to go on a journey through hell, up the mountain of purgatory, and then to heaven with the hope of attaining a glimpse of the face of God. And only then will he be able to return home, which was his city of Florence. So Dante takes off on this journey. In the first movement, the Inferno, to really understand the music, you need to understand a little bit about Dante's Hell. And as I told the students, quite frankly, this is the 13th century, there would be no Star Wars. There would be no Star Trek that was just so wonderfully played by the orchestra. None of that would take place. There would be no Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, if Dante had not paved the way for developing this incredible imaginary world. So to really understand Dante's Hell, imagine me holding the globe, the earth, in my hands. And from the perimeter to the very center, there's a funnel. That funnel is made up of concentric circles. Each circle represents a sin. And how you sin on earth is how you pay back. The concept of symbolic retribution. Dante divided hell into 4 main sections. The first section is called limbo. We all have heard the term. We all use the term. Dante coined it. Limbo is a really beautiful place in Dante's Hell. It is for all those souls that died before Christ. It's beautiful. Dante, as he was going through limbo, met wonderful people, Socrates, Plato, Homer. But at the same time, they cannot go to heaven because they came before Christ. Limbo is a beautiful place, but there's something a little sorrowful there because something's missing. They don't know what it is. Something's just missing. You'll hear that in the opening oboe solo. From there, Dante gets to literally the gates into hell, the second section. There's a huge wall, and there's a sign above the gate that says, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. If you go in, you will not come out." You'll know when the gates of hell get there, because it'll interrupt that oboe solo with an energy. From there, the next section of circles are reserved for the violent sinners. These are the people who commit acts of physical violence against their fellow man, such as murder. Now, in Dante's Hell, the deeper you are, the deeper you go into hell, the more serious the sin. So here we are, the murderers. They are destined for all eternity to walk on blazing desert sands with winds of flames literally burning their flesh for all eternity, so that they will experience the pain and agony of those that they inflicted upon on earth. The next section of hell is reserved for the fraudulents. Now, when I first read this, I was so struck with the concept. I mean, you tell me, Dante, that it's more serious as we get deeper into hell, and you're telling me that a fraud is a greater sin than a murder. And after thinking about it, as I discussed and explained to the students, if I come up and I say I'm going to kill you, there's no doubt in your mind what it is I'm about to do. At least you have a chance to get away. But what about those people that pull on one front and then stab you in the back from another? And when I look at it from that point of view, it does make sense. I chose, of all the fraudulent sins, I chose the sin of hypocrisy. Just so you know how the frauds and the hypocrites pay back. They walk around their circle wearing coats of lead. The weight of that lead coat is in direct proportion to the weight of their hypocrisy on earth. Around the circle, all these people are walking, and the greatest sinners of all time are buried with only their heads exposed. And each hypocrite goes by with that lead coat and has to stomp, literally stomp on their head, so that those sinners will bear the weight of the entire world's hypocrisy. You get to the end of that circle, there's a large gargoyle character with a blade, and he swings that blade and chops their head off. Their head falls into their hands, and they feel every bit of that pain. They reattach their head and start the circle once again. Kind of makes you rethink the life of hypocrisy, doesn't it? The final section of hell, there are very large giants that are going to lower Dante in the deepest section of hell. But first, Dante hears the dreaded blast of a bugle. A sound that is so dread, it is even worse than that which signaled the beginning of Armageddon. These giants lower Dante into the deepest, darkest depths of hell, and they come face to face with Satan. Again, if you'll allow me, let me describe Satan. Satan is man's torso, animal's flanks, has one head and three faces. As Dante gets close to Satan and looks, he sees in each of those mouths there are three sinners being eternally rended or chewed upon by Satan. Sharp teeth just absolutely gashing at their flesh. Those three sinners are Judas, Brutus, and Cassius. Now, Dante being the exact center of the earth, any direction from Satan is up. So in order for Dante to escape to the other side of the world, he has to climb up the flanks of Satan to escape and leave the fiery world of the Inferno behind. The honor I would like to present the Inferno from the Divine Comedy. his trip through hell, Dante now has to go on a contemplation and journey through purgatory. We are not, due to time constraints, we're not playing Purgatorio this evening. However, you need to know that in Purgatory, there's a mountain, and it has 7 terraces on it. And he journeys up this mountain. Each of those terraces represents one of the 7 deadly sins. As he reaches the very top of the mountain and has gone through that very intense journey, Dante is joined by an angel, a guide. He named her Beatrice, after an unrequited love on earth. As he's standing on top of the Mount of Purgatory, he hears the music of the spheres, a very distant sound that I'll invite our players to go ahead and set up for right now as I'm speaking. He hears this brass, this beautiful brass, that is behind and up on the heavens. He turns and looks to see where this beautiful sound is coming from. And at that point, he is, as Dante called it, transhumanized. In other words, changed into a beam of light that flies to the heavens on a journey of incredible speed. As I was explaining to the students, it was the very first beam me up, Scotty. As we're making our trips to the heavens, you can imagine the sheer power and the intensity of such a flight, literally traveling at light speed, or maybe we should say God speed. As we start approaching the heavens, believe me, you will know. The honors band would like to present the 3rd movement from the Divine Comedy. This is entitled The Ascension.
tonight, I would like to bring back all three of our conductors and let you show your appreciation to all of them. And I think it would be appropriate for our students to take a standing ovation too. All the students, please stand. Stand. Thank you all for coming and for supporting our music programs in Escambia County Schools. Thank you and good night.